Hi, everybody. This is Rabbi Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching on our Friends at Torah Anytime or wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, once again, we are happy to have you along for this third year of our podcast. And I have to tell you the truth. I mentioned last time about us being a community. One person already wrote me about wanting to come and move to my new town in Israel. So, if we get up to about 30, I think we'll start. So 29 more people want to come and live together in our little cult village. This is your opportunity. But the truth is, I have no way of knowing the impact. I mean, I go on different sites and try to figure out how many people are watching this. I can't get any real numbers. But I do know that last Friday night, two Beis Yaakov girls, I don't want to reveal their seminary because I don't want to get them into trouble, but they evidently broke protocol and stopped in to visit. They said that they're big fans of the show. So this and she says, now that I'm in seminary, of course I can't get it, unless somebody can record it for me and and bring it over or something. But she says she listens to it on Spotify. Full disclosure, I don't even know what Spotify is. I don't even know I'm on Spotify. I'm sorry. Michal made me a Facebook page. People ask me, why aren't you on Instagram? I don't even know what Instagram is, but evidently people listening on Spotify, I have no idea. I don't even know where this is going from. I just gave somebody a ride today. She told me that she and her whole family watches it on Torah Anytime, and it's something that they all enjoy. It's something for the whole family. So it's hard to know how many people are actually with us, and it could be that the experience we share together, because I can't see all of you at the same time. I just did a Zoom call. It was a program here in Yerushalayim. I had a Zoom call. He said to me, 500 people can call in, but you'll never reach that number. I mean, we've never had anything like that. Anyway, he had to call up emergency and extend it because they had 600 people who called in, and he says it's a one-way thing. They can see you, you can't see anybody. It always kind of freaks me out a little bit. When I give a Zoom show, I always ask people, please turn on your cameras, because otherwise I'm just talking to myself. If I want that, I could just stay home and talk to my family. Just kidding. Anyway, I actually have family members who watch, so I'm just kidding. That's just Abba's sense of humor. Anyway, so definitely there's so many people, and as I said at the beginning, we're happy to have you along. And we have a sponsor this week. It is sponsored in honor and memory of Zelig ben Aryeh Leib by his children, and it's a beautiful thing because all the children joined together in this sponsorship. And I don't handle the sponsorships. Michal handles everything. It's amazing that I actually know how to turn on the Zoom and record this to send it out now that I'm not in the official Rabbi Orlofsky studios. Full disclosure, when I first started doing it myself, every now and then I would forget to push the record button. So Michal had to set it up so it automatically records and then automatically sends it to him, because he knows that I can't even be trusted to do that. So anyway, so he says that they didn't say to mention everybody's name, so I won't, but what a beautiful thing that all the children should join together to do this. Is a tremendous covet. from different families all around. And what can I say? It should be an aliyah from the neshama. And listen, as I tell my wife all the time, you turn around and you see that you leave behind children and grandchildren, sometimes great-grandchildren in this world. By the time you leave it, and you say, well, in case anybody ever asks, did I do anything in this world? Yeah, what an amazing thing. And when all the children get together to honor their father who has passed on, it is such a tremendous chus, and it should be a tremendous aliyah for the neshama. Okay, so there's when I met these various people who told me that they're all watching the podcast and we're entering in our third year, it reminded me of two stories. And I will juxtapose the two stories because they are interesting. The first one happened in 1977 when all of Yeshiva Chavetz Chaim came to Eretz Yisrael. Rav Henoch Leibowitz loved Eretz Yisrael. His father loved Eretz Yisrael. In fact, when he opened up Yeshiva Chavetz Chaim, he had land in Eretz Yisrael that he sold back in the 20s, I guess it was, 20s, 30s, and to be able to get the money to open the yeshiva. And Rav Henoch loved Eretz Yisrael. So there were a few times he picked up the entire yeshiva from Queens and moved them for a year to Eretz Yisrael. So one of those years was 1977, and I had the chus to be there for that event. And it was remarkable because this was a yeshiva that was used to accommodating 30, maybe 40 people, and suddenly they had 250 with the koil and everything. It was an astounding thing. It definitely changed the face of Sanhedrin Marchevet for many years, but it was an amazing thing. So while we were there, a number of Bachrim got together to start a chesed bad. And they asked the Yeshiva to give divrei chizuk to the new chesed bad. And he said the following: Noah comes off the table. Noah comes off the ark, and the first thing he does is plant a vineyard. And the Mefarshim all describe and discuss. And the Mefarshim all discuss why he decided to make a vineyard, why that was the first thing he engaged in, whether it was a good idea or not, whatever the case may be. And he plants a vineyard. And as we know, it ended poorly. He got drunk, and his son Cham comes in and does what he does. And basically, the rest of world history is set into motion from that story. I mean, this is the first post-Diluvian event. Plants the vineyard, gets drunk, and then the actions of his three sons play out for thousands of years. In any event, so the first thing is plant the vineyard. And the Yeshiva brought a Yalkut Shimoni that says the following. As soon as he went to plant the vineyard, now the actual lashon up there is that there was a shade that says he wanted to help. The Yeshiva put it in terms of the Yetzer Hara, the Satan. And he said the following: the first one who volunteers when you want to set out to do something is the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara. So he says you got to be very careful when you're starting an undertaking, because there's always somebody or some force that wants to try to usurp this and use it for something negative. Almost every movement in the Jewish people started out at some point with the noblest intentions and purposes. And often, not always, but often it got derailed. And the reason is because people would start to look at it for their own point of view. You look at, I'm doing something with Shema, and other people look at it and they say, an opportunity. I can get a job. My friend can get a job. Have my brother-in-law out. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? Yeah. Girls' education in Eretz Yisrael in general is difficult. There was a crisis at one point in Yerushalayim. A crisis. There were certain schools that billed themselves as the most elite. And of course, everybody wants to be elite. Nobody wants to be ordinary. Yeah. There's this historian, Victor David Hansen, and Davis Hansen, sorry. And I heard him speaking. He says that one of his machines wasn't working on the farm, and this fellow came in and took it apart, put it back together. Something I could never hope to do. And we looked down at him. He says he's much smarter than most of these people that I work with in university. Actually knows how to do something, you know. But when you start something, yeah. So some people look at it anyway. Girls' education was a mess because there were certain schools that were elite, and everyone wants to go to an elite school. Nobody wants to go to a bad school. It was interesting. There was years ago an American seminary opened up in Yerushalayim, and it's a sad story. It's a sad story. Half the girls were bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like out-of-town Beis Yaakov girls who couldn't get into the more high-powered seminaries. And they were coming because they were promised that this was going to be a very quality seminary. But they couldn't fill up their numbers. So the other half of the seminary was made up of not such quality Beis Yaakov girls from the New York area. The two were, you know, water and oil. It couldn't possibly mix. There were two separate seminaries going on. And these other girls engaged in activities that gave the whole seminary a bad name. And one of the out-of-town girls told me, she says, I only came here not just because I wanted to get a good, Torah Hashkafa foundation, but frankly, when it comes to Shidduchim, they ask, did you go to seminary? Where did you go? I'm going to tell them where I went to, and it's going to kill all my Shidduchim because someone says, oh, that place, that's not a good place. Yeah. So you have to be very wary. So there were schools that opened up, and nobody wanted to go to the schools that weren't the best schools. Everybody's the best. I have a daughter who was born on the English calendar January 1st, 1:34 in the morning, an hour and 34 minutes into the next year. Otherwise, I would have gotten a tax write-off. So kids just cost you money. But anyway, so if I was applying for school in America where the cutoff is January 1st, that wouldn't have been much of an issue because she missed the deadline by an hour and 34 minutes. However, she was born Motzi Asar B'Teves. That's how I remember most of my children's birthdays. Everybody was born either before, after, or occasionally in the middle. Yeah. So my oldest daughter was born Erev Yom HaZikaron, April 16th, which is the day after the tax filing. My second daughter was born second day Shavuos, which here in Eretz Yisrael is the day after Shavuos. Yeah. My third child was born Motzi Shabbos Nachamu. So this daughter was born Motzi Asar B'Teves. It goes on like that. I don't want to go through the whole thing. I have a lot of kids. I can spend a whole podcast just talking about their birthdays. Anyway, people are impressed that I remember it, but I have a trick. It's either before or after. Anyway, I have one daughter who was born on July 3rd, which is obviously before July 4th. For those of you not in America, because I don't want my people in Switzerland to get upset at me. In America, that's Independence Day. Is the 4th of July. Yeah, she was born on the 3rd of July, and she was born on the 16th of Tammuz, the day before the fast. Anyway, so this daughter was born Motzi Asar B'Teves, so the 11th of Teves. And the cutoff in Eretz Yisrael is Rosh Chodesh Teves. So here she missed the deadline, not by an hour and 34 minutes, but by 11 days. And her Ganenet said, she was still 5 officially, says, you can't leave her back here. Please, for the love of God, don't do this to us. My kids are not made for God. This kid, she was just too smart, you understand? There's only so much time you can spend cutting and pasting. I had one daughter that they advised to leave back, yeah, and she taught herself how to read, and like during hafsakah, during the recess, she would sit there and read books to the children. I mean, my kids are not really made for God, cutting and pasting and stuff like that. It's just, those aren't the skills. In fact, it seems that, I assume, I don't know this to be true because I never went to 12th grade. When I went to the Hebrew Academy in Nassau County, you had an option to graduate after 11th grade, which I took advantage of. And had to make up a couple of classes in summer school, public school. That was my only foray into public school, and what an experience that was. I'll have to talk about that one time. But anyway, but in 12th grade, evidently the workload becomes much lighter. And we had to, give her this like rigayon. This is the stuff you take to relax you, because she would just make so much trouble in class because there was no intellectual stimulation. She was bored. You're a really smart kid and they get bored. It's not good for anybody. Anyway, so the teacher says, don't leave her back here again. Please move her up. I know she misses the deadline. She'll be the youngest kid in the class, but trust me, it's worthwhile. So we asked. So we said, okay, there's going to be 4 evaluation sessions. 4 evaluation sessions. I said, okay, when do I bring it for the first one? He says, no, the first one is for you and your wife. I said, what? They said, this is Israel. Every kid is a genius. There's no parent who will tell you my kid is not a genius. There's no parent who tells you my kid is not exceptional. Everybody is exceptional. Yeah. So, so we want to have an evaluation first to see if you people are crazy. Now, surprisingly, they didn't catch it. They said I was normal. Anyway, just shows you can't trust the psychological community. But in any event, so then she took 3 evaluations. And they told us afterwards, she's not a genius. She's very, very smart, but she's not a genius. Yeah, you can move her up. But everybody wants to move up because everybody wants to be the best. Yeah. Somebody once told me, if you want to open a Bay's Yeshiva, it was a B school, you have to say we're in AA school or no B students will come. Because no B student wants to go to a B school. If you open up a B school, you get D students. You understand? That's what somebody explained to me, because everybody wants. Anyway, so the situation was terrible. There were girls just sitting at home, not getting into any school, not getting anywhere. It was terrible. So I decided I was going to open a high school. Now you understand, Ani Amerikai, Yisraelim, mipam lepam yodeh et zeh, ani lo yodeh ech, ki bivtah sheli kol kach tov. My accent is so exceptional. I don't know how they detect from time to time that I'm American, but Americans here are an underclass. Nobody wants to go to an American school. Yeah. In fact, when I finally was in the process of starting it, I went to a number of Americans. And they said, we so need a school like this. I said, would you send your daughter? He goes, well, if I can't get her into any place else, sure. As Groucho Marx famously said, I wouldn't join a club that would have me as a member. Yeah, need exclusivity. I heard the story many years ago that when the Potash Rav was opening up the Potash Yeshiva, nobody was applying. So he took ads out in all the Haredi papers and said, registration is closed. I'm sorry, we have no more space. And he got a flood of requests. And he just kept telling everyone, no, no, no. And then finally people were pressuring. He let this one in, let that one in. Is it a true story? I don't know. I'm not Pesach prone. I don't check out my stories. It could be, it's not. I don't care. It's a great story. Anyway, Rabbi Wein famously says, all my stories are true. It's just some of them haven't happened yet. In any event, so there was a tremendous problem going on. So I decided, I don't know too much about the business. I was prepared to fundraise something that goes against everything I stand for. I am the single worst fundraiser in the world. I'm terrible. When I was running NCSY, I would have people from time to time say to me, I like what you're doing. Stop by my house. I want to give you a check. I couldn't do it. My parents brought me up, never ask anybody for anything. At this point in my life, I'm in my 60s. At this point in my life, if I'm someplace, I'm davening in some shul or something, I don't have a car, I'm staying a mile away, I'll walk rather than ask somebody for a ride. I can't. That's how my parents brought me up. Moshe Gottesman Zatzal yelled at me once. He says, you're doing a terrible avla. He says, do you understand when I go and I ask somebody for tzedakah, what am I asking for me? I'm giving these people a schus, I'm giving them olam haba. Do you understand how many people you're denying an opportunity to? He's intellectually right, but I'm emotionally scarred in many, many ways. Trust me, I would make a wonderful case study. But anyway, so I decided I would fundraise, whatever, I wanted to start this school. And I went to meet with a prominent Rosh Yeshiva. I don't want to mention his name. An Israeli, part of the Israeli system. I explained to him what I wanted to do, and he walked me through a little bit, some ideas, etc. And he says, and what are you going to do? I said, me? Nothing. He says, Ma? I said, I just want to get this started because you need it. But if somebody hears that there's an American involved, even if I'm just the executive director or something like that, forget it. It's the kiss of death. He said, Ma, l'shem shamayim? Iyashar kacha. You're doing it altruistically? No, you can't do it. It's impossible. Now, I didn't press him. There's two pshatim. Yeah. One is that maybe he felt that if you don't have a personal vested interest, you won't work hard enough, or you won't get siyata. I don't know what. Or maybe he just, being an Israeli, was like, no, you have to be a part of it. Everyone knows that. Why would you start something and not be a part of it? It's illogical. Somebody said to me once, you have to understand that in Yerushalayim, everybody lived on what was called the Chalukah. They used to collect money for Chutz La'aretz, and they would divide it up among everybody, in the Frum community. Well, that's all there was a Frum community. They used to divide it up among the Jews. And it was bare sustenance. So if you could get your hands on any position that might pay you a few more, liras, it made the difference between life and death, often for a family. Therefore, there are always people looking to take over an organization and make it what they want. So, okay. But the first one to join is the Yetzer Hara. Because you mess things up. It's interesting when they were starting the Agudas Yisrael. Now, yeah, the Chavetz Chaim and the Ger Rebbe, you know what I mean? And everybody was jumping on board. And one of the people who famously refused to join was Reb Chaim Brisker. Now, he was a very important figure in the Jewish world at that point. Having him on board certainly would help to add to the general credibility of the enterprise. So he says, listen, when everybody lights their own candles and somebody's candle blows out, he's in darkness, but everybody else is in light. But when you have an electric company that's providing electricity to everybody, if the generator goes down, the power plant goes down, everyone's in darkness. He says, you're building an electric company. I'm going to keep my candle burning in my house. So if you guys do something wrong and it all gets messed up, I'm okay. Because there's always a danger when you start something. And that's what the Yeshiva was trying to say. When you start something, the first one to join is the Yetzer Hara. And to be able to keep something, an endeavor, I don't say an organization, an endeavor, free from any malice. My son was involved with the yeshiva. I'll mention his name, Rabbi Potash. I've filmed fundraising videos for the yeshiva because I believe in it. Because there are many, many yeshivas. Very few are unique. This is a unique yeshiva. They focus not just on in-depth learning and Bekiyas, finish Masechtas, finish Shas. And every year they have all the people make a Siyam Shas that finish Shas on their own. Besides the fact that there's tremendous amkus. My son is one of those, sick geniuses in my family, as I've mentioned, and he went from yeshiva to yeshiva because, the Hanhali used to make haruzas with him. They didn't know what to do with him. He came here. He says the amkus here, the brilliance and the depth is unbelievable. But the yeshiva has a policy of we don't have to spend time in shtick. Let Torah speak for itself. Torah speak for itself. I'll give you an example. In Yerushalayim, in Eretz Yisrael, Yeshiva Bachrim are not allowed to have a driver's license. Okay. Could be because they're afraid then they'll go driving places and Batala and who knows what. They'll be hard to control. Okay. So one yeshiva either hacked the system or paid off somebody, I don't know what, and they got access to all the driver license registrations in the state of Israel. And they cross-referenced it with all of the yeshiva bachrim. And anyone who they found out had a license, they threw him out of yeshiva. So Potash sent out a general call, and he said, anyone who got thrown out, get in your car and drive to me. Because I want you to learn Torah. You understand? Even with the driver's license, I want you to learn Torah, yeah. And he's an extremely l'shem shemayim person. He looks at anybody comes to him with any problem in Klal Yisrael, his attitude is, how do we solve it? Somebody comes to him with a poor guy, somebody needs this, whatever it is. He looks at it as how can we solve this problem? It's my obligation, And he says that Reb Chaim Oizer, who was known as being the gadol of Klal Yisrael, spent most of his day in Chesed. That's what you have to do. So you have to worry about every single person. So anyway, there were these guys who were not ready for a yeshiva. They were probably not even ready for a prep, like a introductory to a yeshiva. They were on the other side of the road. So he wanted to start a program. So this guy came to him and says, "Oh, I already have a program. So work with me." Okay, so Potash sent all of his guys there, and he was working with it, and he'd come in and give a share, etc. And this guy felt threatened, and he threw Rav Potash out of his own yeshiva. And of course, people like my son, who were Talmidim, were slightly outraged. And Potash said, "What are you going to fight with this guy for? This is all he has. This is his whole life. He decided he's a Rosh Yeshiva, he has a program, that's fine." And bit by bit, everybody drifted away because this guy couldn't do it. They wanted somebody of the caliber of Rav Potash, of a Rosh Yeshiva, to be able to do this. And they drifted away. He ended up starting another program. He started a program for guys who weren't there. But this other person wanted the program because he wanted to be a Rosh Yeshiva. He wanted a program. It was a very famous Rosh Yeshiva in Etzl. He said once, there's 3 reasons to become a Rosh Yeshiva. One is you want Talmidim. Second one is, let's face it, you make more money when you're a shiurim than when you're learning a kollel or you're a rebbe. And the third is for the covet. So I'll tell you the truth, except for the third reason, the other two aren't good enough. So when you start an endeavor, there's always somebody there who wants to do it for their own purposes. The Yetzer Hara comes in and says, I want to help you make this vineyard. That's the first story. Here's the second story. 45 years ago, be'erach, it was over 40 years ago. I was in Eretz Yisrael. And a friend of mine was in another yeshiva with a charismatic, relatively young rabbi. And he told the following story. I won't mention which yeshiva he was in, but he was in a very famous yeshiva in America, and he wanted to make a chesed pot. And he starts a chesed pot. And after a few weeks, the yeshiva asks him, how's it going? He goes, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Everybody's participating. We're giving out different jobs to everybody. Everybody's doing their jobs. Everybody's this, everybody's that. It's unbelievable. It's so good. Everything's going so well. And the Rosh Yeshiva looked upset. I couldn't understand why he looked upset. I mean, this is what we call good news. Yeah. And I saw him a couple of weeks later. He says, how's it going? And I said, terrible. This one started fighting with this one. This one stopped doing his job. This one dropped out. I don't know what to do. I think I'm going to just end it. So Yeshiva says, Baruch Hashem. He says, Baruch Hashem. When I told you everything was going well, so you were upset. Now that I tell you everything's going bad, you're happy. He says, you're starting off to make a chesed vad. You're spitting in the face of the Satan. You're saying, Olam chesed yiboneh. The Torah is chesed. Torah is chesed. Torah starts with chesed and ends with chesed. Everything is chesed. And you're going to make a chesed vad? Where's the Yetzer Hara? And I said to myself, it must be you are the Yetzer Hara. And I was going to tell my son to drop out. It must be that there's something evil here. But now that I see you're having trouble, and I realize that the Yetzer Hara is coming after you, I feel better. And he gave me chizuk, and I continued. The irony of the story is that this fellow, looking across the room, saying, it must be you're the Yetzer Hara. Those words came back to haunt me when this fellow was driven out of the yeshiva for child molestation of his students. It was such a scandal, and people had to drop out and all kinds of terrible things. But I should never forget him looking with that intensity, saying, the Yeshiva said to me, you're the Yetzer Hara. And so, whenever we do anything, as much as possible, we have to maintain the purest of intentions. When the Russian government insisted that Volozhin introduce secular studies, the Netziv closed down the yeshiva rather than to allow them to dictate it. Because when you start anything, there's always the possibility that somebody is going to come in with bad intentions to be able to twist it. And so you have to be very wary when you begin any endeavor. So this idea occurred to me, obviously, when I had these two back-to-back incidents of people who seem like the finest, some of the finest people in Klal Yisrael, who tell me that they listen to this podcast. I told you once upon a time that somebody told me they're an anhola of a yeshiva here in Eretz Yisrael, an American yeshiva, and bein hastorim, they go out and they listen to the podcast together, the whole anhola. So I am so nervous. I'm so nervous. So let me take a moment just to speak about myself and my favorite topics. somebody said to me an interesting thing. They said, I listened to recordings of yours from 30 years ago. And I listened to you today, and you sound exactly the same. I was like, yeah. He says, don't you understand, the longer people stay in the field, they start to take on certain affectations. And I always say, and I tell my students, and what I say, it's like, he says, and you sound exactly the same, like a disgruntled youth. You haven't matured, you haven't had it. So I said, I'll tell you why. When people tell me they're considering a career, in public speaking, I always tell them, I said, when you start to believe your introductions, it's time for you to get out of the business. Somebody once gave this unbelievable introduction to Dovid Cohen, like over the top. And he gets up and he looks a little choked up. He says, I just wish my parents could have been here to hear this. My father would have enjoyed it. My mother would have believed it. I'm always very wary. Yeah. And that's why every now and then I get an email. People were worried for, somebody just wrote me something. They said, oh, you should just say that. I want to preserve your dignity. It's too late for that. Don't worry about my dignity. Don't worry about my dignity. You gotta, if you think you have a message that's important, that people can relate to, that's what you have to say. And you have to be very wary, very wary. I know it's right around the corner that I'm going to get some big corporate sponsor. It's going to want to take over this show. Going to pay me tens of thousands of dollars per podcast to be able to give across their message. Anyway, I'm going to that's rabbi at RabbiOrlofsky.com. So anyway, I remember years ago, somebody said to me, the good thing about you, Rabbi Orlofsky, is I know you'll never sell out. And I said, don't be silly. No one's offered me enough money yet. Everyone has a price. Don't think so. It's just I'm not important enough. But that's it. We have to, everything we do in our life, when it comes to our marriages, when it comes to taking care of our children, when it comes to chavrusas, when it comes to anything that we do, remember that the Yetzer Hara is hiding in the background saying, I'd love to help. And he's the first one to volunteer to help us. So Mitzvah Hashem, as we start continuing to start our third year, Kadosh Baruch Hu should give us siyata d'shmaya, that we should be able to share messages with people that give them chizuk, make their life a little better, put a smile on the face of a person who might be getting a little down. I don't know why. Maybe because they've been locked in their house for 8 months. Who knows why? Some people get crazy over the smallest things. Whatever the case may be, because Baruch Hu should give us chizuk, should give us strength to go mechoyel choyel. That's it for this week. If you want to find out more about the show, go to RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can contact me. You can comment on the show. I get some comments from time to time. You can sponsor an episode. Yeah. Again, for the corporate sponsors, that's RabbiOrlofsky.com. Anyway, that's it for this week. My name is Dovid Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. The Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.